How's it going, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to my channel, The Cosmic Wonder, where we talk about all things Marvel and everything relating to the MCU. And today we have some Ant-Man 3 news. We have some news about the production of Ant-Man 3, when it's supposed to start, and when we can expect to actually see Ant-Man 3 on the big screen. And then, of course, we have an Ant-Man 3 plot leak. A plot leak that involves a new hero, a new villain, and the Young Avengers. As many as predicted for a very long time now, especially after Avengers Endgame, the next Ant-Man film is going to be a pretty pivotal movie for setting up the Young Avengers, especially with Cassie Lang, Scott Lang's daughter, who goes on to be Stature in the comics. So we'll talk about these new reports of the production of Ant-Man 3 and break down this new plot leak, including the new characters and new villain. A villain that links back to Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But first, if you're new, be sure to subscribe so you stay up to date on everything relating to the MCU, and so you can enter this week's giveaway for a chance to win a Doctor Doom Funko Pop. All you have to do to enter is subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a comment about the video down below. So recently, fans were kind of confused and kind of disappointed because not too long ago, Michael Douglas in an interview was talking about Ant-Man 3, and he said that we'd have some news relatively soon. But unfortunately, we really haven't heard much in regards to Ant-Man 3. Now, of course, during the time that we're in right now, it's rather difficult for all of the studios because they've had to put a lot of projects on hold. But Marvel Studios reshuffled their entire Phase 4 lineup, including some movies that aren't a part of Phase 4 like Captain Marvel 2. But we got no word about Ant-Man 3. That is, until now. Recently, Charles Murphy of MurphysMultiverse.com shared a little bit of information that he heard in regards to Ant-Man 3 and its starting production. And Charles Murphy says, as of now, Ant-Man 3 has been rescheduled to begin production in June of 2021 in Atlanta. So that's just a little less than a year away from now. And as far as when to expect the actual film hitting theaters if everything goes back to normal, he says, Ant-Man 3 has not been canceled and is absolutely still in the plans. If, by some miracle, everything stays on track and long-term shutdowns are avoided, we could see Ant-Man 3 in theaters late 2022 or early 2023. Which is kind of great news because obviously we have to get through Marvel's Phase 4 before we go on to the projects that are not a part of Phase 4. So late 2022 or early 2023 is pretty good news for the Ant-Man fans. And speaking of some good news, we have a plot leak for Ant-Man 3 today. Now, this plot leak was discovered by ScreenGeek.com, and like with all leaks, they could be true or they may not be true, so take it with a grain of salt. But as most of you know, we have discovered many true plot leaks on my channel, including some for Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. You never know, but let's dive into this Ant-Man 3 plot leak. So it starts off by saying Ant-Man 3 will be about Cassie leaving her family to be an Avenger, with Scott and Hope trying to stop her. Now, this is something that's actually been brought up several different times. Now, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, we saw a young Cassie who wanted to be a superhero. She wanted to help her father fight crime. Now, of course, obviously, she was too young at that point in time, but then in Avengers Endgame, we see a more grown-up Cassie Lang. Now, this adds up with everything that we've heard before about Cassie Lang. What we've heard in the past is that Cassie now wants to be a superhero following in her father's footsteps, but her father and Hope do not want to let her. Obviously, as any good parents would not let their children go out and take on supervillains, but apparently this movie is going to be about her kind of running away from them, going to be an Avenger, and them trying to stop her. Now, of course, Cassie is not going to initially go on to join the normal Avengers. She's going to join the Young Avengers. And in the comics, she plays a pretty important role on the team of the Young Avengers as Stature. Now, it sounds like we could be getting a little bit of the story from the comics. In the comics, her parents really don't want her to have anything to do with the Avengers, but Cassie idolizes the heroes, especially after watching her father as Ant-Man. But she begins to experiment with some Pym particles that she takes from her father. Cassie plans on escaping and running away to join Marvel's Runaways, but then she discovers the Young Avengers and she would eventually go on to join them. So So it definitely sounds like Ant-Man 3 will set up the Young Avengers with Cassie going off on her own, trying to be a superhero, then maybe by the end of the movie, figuring out that there is a Young Avengers team. After all, we do have Wiccan and Speed, the daughter of Wanda and Vision, coming in the WandaVision series. We have Kate Bishop coming in to take on the mantle of Hawkeye. Everyone expects Iron Lad to come in, then there's Hulkling, and of course we know about Miss Marvel. So the Young Avengers team is there. They're going to come into the MCU. It's only a matter of time, and it looks like Ant-Man 3 is going to be one of the films that set that team up. So in Ant-Man 3, we're going to have Cassie Lang run off and try to be a hero on her own, but of course she's going to need help from her father, Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, and Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. Cassie will most likely get in over her head, and then of course Ant-Man and the Wasp are going to have to come in and help. And speaking of them needing to help her, they do talk about the villain in this leak as well. They say that as far as the leak goes, the villain of Ant-Man 3 is Modok. And if you're unfamiliar with who he is, he was once George Tarleton, a man of unspectacular intelligence who was used by the terrorist organization AIM, or AIM, which stands for Advanced Idea Mechanics, and he was used in experiments to enhance mental powers. And MODOK is actually an acronym that stands for Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing. Now there are some really important things to note here about this villain and about AIM. We have had several rumors that MODOK will be entering the MCU pretty soon, and it just so happens that the director and screenwriters for Ant-Man 3 have publicly stated their interest in having him in the film. And AIM already exists in the MCU, and this is the really important part because we have it in the past in the MCU in Phase 2, and we've actually already seen it in Phase 4 in a trailer. Now, if you recall, back in Iron Man 3, back in Phase 2, they mentioned AIM. Aldrich Killian was actually running that faction. And of course, if you've seen the movie, you know that they've already begun to do experiments on actual individuals all the way back then. So AIM has existed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for several years now. And we know that Marvel loves to tie everything back together. Marvel plans ahead years and years in advance, and they plant seeds very early on that finally sprout later on, years later. So they're definitely going to be referencing these events of Iron Man 2, plus not to mention the Mandarin. The real Mandarin is coming in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and of course we had that fake Mandarin in Iron Man 3 as well. So Ant-Man and the Wasp are definitely going to have some callbacks to Iron Man 3. And as I mentioned before, we've actually seen AIM in a Phase 4 project already because we've seen AIM in one of the trailers for Black Widow. It's in the final trailer for Black Widow, or what they were calling the final trailer at the time, as we know that there are actually 2 more trailers coming relatively soon. But it's in the scene where Yelena Belova, Natasha's sister in the film, is strapped down to a table.
I should have come back for you.
So just based off of the clip, you probably have missed it, but it was actually Charles Murphy who discovered it in the past. And he said, through the magic of flipping the picture, you might see the word AIM above Yelena's noggin. This is almost certainly after the big final fight, since she's wearing the same outfit. And as you can see, if we freeze this picture and we take a look, you can see the words AIM right next to her. And she also happens to be on an operating table, and in this same scene, we see somebody about to give her a shot. She also has lines upon her head which lead people to believe that maybe a face swap is happening here, but that's a video for another day. The point is, we clearly see the word AIM right next to her in this scene, and it looks like it's AIM who's going to be operating on her in whatever is happening here, confirming that AIM definitely still does exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So AIM has existed and has been doing experiments on people since Iron Man 3 back in Phase 2, and now we have proof of them being in Phase 4. So this does clearly make it a perfect setup for MODOK to enter in Ant-Man 3. In fact, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, there was the mention of a mysterious benefactor, and we never found out who that was, and Marvel would not mention somebody like that just to keep him in the dark and never explain who he was. He's definitely going to be brought into light, and most likely in Ant-Man 3 because they mentioned him in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So many people right now do believe that this mysterious benefactor could be MODOK, and this is going to be the main villain in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Stature, as people are calling it right now. Let's face it, that title just makes sense. But this will be the villain that Cassie will initially go after herself, but of course will eventually need the help of her father, Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, and Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp. So if all of this comes true, and all of it does seem to line up, so it looks like like it probably will, we're going to get a new character in the form of Scott Lang's daughter, Cassie Lang, taking on her superhero role of Stature, and we're going to get a new villain, Modok, the mental organism designed only for killing. So let me know, what do you think about this plot leak? Is this something that you would like to see in Ant-Man 3? Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to stay up to date on all things relating to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For live updates, you can follow me on Twitter, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.